morning, everybody. We're going to talk about ellipses today. And this first sheet is your formula sheet. You can either copy it over, print it, or whatever you need to do to have it by your side. If you do look for one online and they don't use these particular letters, keep looking because you're going to get confused. I teach it with these letters, and there's other ways of teaching ellipses. Every book has their own version. So if you look at the formula sheet at the top, you've got a horizontal side and a vertical side. And I'm going to put the horizontal here. That's the H and the V, okay? So just like before, when we have to decide if the parabola went left or right or up or down, we have to decide what part of the formula sheet we're on. Well, an ellipse is a oval shape, so it has a short width and a long width. And if you look at the graph down here, if you look at the center would be right here, and the short width would be all the way across here, and the long one would be all the way across here. So in this case, the center is -2, 3, which it has it, -2, 3. It's vertical, so we're going to use the right side of the formula sheet. And this short side here, A, is the long side from the center to the top. So A would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Right there is A. And B would be 4. That would be B, the short side from the center to the top. So if you look at the length of the major axis, major means the long side, it's 2 times A, which is 10. And the length of the minor axis is 2 times B, which is 8. So that's how you figure it out. So how does the equation work? If you notice, A is always going to be longer than B, because A is the major axis, half of the major axis, and B is half of the minor axis. So the A is always going to be underneath the direction that the ellipse takes. So if your big number is under the Y, that means it's vertical. If your bigger number is under the X, that means it's horizontal. So you can look at that. Let's look at the parts of an ellipse. The equation is a little bit different than you're used to. It's in a fraction form, and it equals 1. If you remember, with the circle, we had a straight line equation. We didn't have fractions in it. So you're going to see fractions for the first time. The center still is HK. The horizontal and vertical is the direction, depending on which way the equation goes. And I already told you, if the big number's under the X minus H, it's horizontal, and if the big number's under the Y minus K, it's vertical. The foci are 2 points, and when I teach this in person, I put on my bulletin board a piece of paper with 2 tacks and a little string, and if you envision a loose string kind of hanging here, like this, then I put my pen in there, and you can actually draw if you move that string around the circle, you can draw your ellipse with the focus. But other than that, there's really no other use for the focus, but you're going to find it. Take those off. Okay? So that's what the foci is. It's just 2 points inside. Now the foci are always on the major axis. So if they give you 2 foci, you can graph them to see if it's vertical or horizontal. If they graph up and down, it's vertical. If they graph side to side, it's horizontal. Be careful with your graphing, guys. You should know how to graph by now. And then we've got the major axis, and the minor axis is 2A and 2B. So we're going to be working with this for about 4 days, so we're going to take it slow. Today you're only going to have 5 problems for homework, but I would suggest you do them on graph paper of some sort. Either you print out a piece of graph paper or go get some. So I'm going to go over some problems now. So the first question we're going to go over is they're going to give us the endpoints of the major axis and the endpoints of the minor axis. So these are pretty easy. In order to write an equation, I need A, B, H, and K. But there's a C associated with the focus, so sometimes I need C, but I don't need C to write the equation on. In this case, I won't need C. So I just need A, B, A equals, B equals, C equals, H, and K. And you don't have to find everything. Once you find A, B, H, and K, you're ready to write the equation. So if you need C, or if you're given C, you need that equation in order to write, you need that letter in order to find B or A, then you need C. But for this one, you don't. I'm going to first plot these points. So negative 11, 5 would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Negative 11, 5 would be right there. And 7, 5 would be right here. So those are the endpoints of the major axis. The endpoints of the minor axis is negative 2, 9. Would be right there. And negative 2, 1 would be right there. So you see how it's setting up. If I were to draw a line between those points, the center would be the guy where they intersect, right? Or you could find the midpoint of the ends of the major axis and the midpoint of the ends of the minor axis. I find drawing it is a lot easier because you can look and see what you're doing. So the center point here is going to be negative 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, negative 2, 5. So H is negative 2, K is 5. Your center is HK. So now to find A is going to be half of the major axis, so it's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And B is going to be half of the minor axis, which is 4. We don't need to find C. We've got enough information to write our equation. Well, this is going to be a horizontal because it's wider than it is tall. So we go to the horizontal side of the equation and we just fill in the blanks. And it's going to be x minus h, when you're used to changing the sign, same thing happens, over a squared. A squared is under the x, so that's 81, plus y minus 5 squared over b squared, which is 16, equals 1. And that is your equation. You just answered the question. It's always equal to 1. Remember that that's part of the equation. It's not, that 1 does not change. It has nothing to do with radius or anything like that with the circle. So all of your homework today is to write the equation given the information, given the clues that they're giving you. So here they're telling you that the major axis is 16 units long and parallel to the x-axis. That means this also is going to be a horizontal ellipse because it's parallel to the x-axis. The long side is, that means it's horizontal. So we're still going to be on the horizontal side of the formula sheet. They give us that the center is 5, 4. So I'm going to plot 5, 4. And that's going to be right here. Now, if the major axis is 16 long and it's parallel to the x-axis, I'm going to go 8 to the right. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And 8 to the left. Everybody see that? That's your major axis. Now, if you count all those blocks, that's 16 blocks long, and it's parallel to the x-axis. So I'm going to draw a line between those. Okay? Now, the minor axis is 8 units long. That means I'm going to go up 4 and down 4. And we're going to draw a line through them. So the ellipse would look something, and bear with my drawing, but would look something like this. And my ellipses look more like footballs. Anyway, so if I have A is the distance, it's half of the distance of the whole major axis, so A is 8. B is half of the distance of the minor axis, which is 4. We don't need C in this problem. There's no mention of foci. When that happens, it'll be a little harder. And H and K is 5 and 4, because that's the center. So now we're ready to write our equation. We go back to our formula, and it's going to be x minus h squared over, again, a squared because it's horizontal. That would be Bailey. And y minus 4 squared over 16 equals 1. Sorry about that. Bailey is now in his crate. They're moving in across the street to a new house, and it's going to be crazy. But anyway, the A, B, H, and K, we just put them in the formula and make it equal to 1, and that is the equation of that ellipse. If you ever have a question as to whether you're doing it right or not, instead of waiting for me to correct it and let you know that you're not doing it right, you can go to Desmos, key in that equation just like that, and it should give you that picture. If it doesn't, you're doing something wrong. You might be putting the A and B in the wrong places, or the H and K, you forgot to change the signs. Okay, so this is the hardest kind. They give you something about the foci. So you know the C is going to be involved, and we have to figure out how to find A, B, H, and K. So I'm going to put the points on here. I'm going to plot them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 10, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 2. Those are the endpoints of the major axis. And 6, 2 is foci 1. And negative 4, 2 is foci 2. And you'll see that they're the same distance away from the endpoints, okay? So if I were to find the midpoint of 10, negative 8, 10, 2 and negative 8, 2, it would be 10 plus negative 8 is 2, divided by 2 is 1. So it would be 1, 2. It would be right here. Everybody see that, where this is the middle part? That's 5 away from the foci, okay? So now let's just start listing our numbers and see what we have. We have A equals, B equals, C equals, H, and K. So if the center is 1, 2, that means that H is 1 and K is 2. And if A is the distance between the center and the endpoint, that's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So A would be 9. So now we have to figure out what this foci is telling us. So the formula for foci is H plus C comma K. And I'm on the left side again. This is another horizontal. I didn't make it that way, but that's the problems that I had to work on in the book. H minus C comma K. So those are the formulas for the foci. And you're used to using these formulas, so don't freak out too much. So I know that the plus one is going to go with the bigger number, with the 6, and the minus one is going to go with the minus 4. So I know that this goes with the 6, 2, and this goes with the minus 4, 2. And we're going to say that H plus C equals 6, and H minus C equals negative 4. Well, if you can see, you have a system of equations. I'm going to change to black here so you can see a little bit better. If you have a system of equations, the C's bite the dust, and we have 2H equals 2, so H equals 1, which we already knew. And then you just plug that 1 in here, and you have that C equals 5. So 1 minus 5 is negative 4, and 1 plus 5 is 6. You have a system of equations. So now we have C. But C doesn't help me write the equation. I still need B. If you look at your formula sheet, right above the box, it has a formula for C. And it's almost a Pythagorean theorem, but not quite. The ellipse has a minus sign. So we have that the formula is C squared equals A squared minus B squared. So 25 equals 81 minus B squared. And now we leave the B alone. So now we have negative B equals, negative B squared equals negative 56. So B squared squared equals 56, and b is going to be the square root of 56, which can be simplified, but we're not going to worry about that right now. You can either put it as a, we'll leave it as a radical because look what's going to happen. So now we have a, b, h, and k. We didn't need the c. We only needed the c to find b. And we have x minus h squared over a squared plus y minus k squared over b squared. And since b squared, b is square root of 56, b squared is just a plain 56 equals 1. So like we did with parabolas, you have the formulas, you use the formulas to find what you're missing. You guys were pretty good at that. If you have any questions, just give me a call or email me and I'll Zoom with you and go